Well, good morning, everybody. On this Friday morning, we have a lot of, I think, just quite interesting connections taking place in the atmosphere right now, which are partly associated with the seasonal changes and finally going to break, I think, this pattern we've been stuck in now, honestly, since about August the 1st. So here it is. This morning, we do have an area of high pressure sitting on the northeast, and that is what's dropped the temperatures there. We have widespread frost and freeze watches, warnings, and advisories. It's also giving us this interesting wind field that's just offshore, linking up to the front that swept through the United States this week, at least the eastern half of the United States, dropping temperatures back. Now, that front is also going to help to initiate the beginnings of a storm system we're going to watch today forming right here that's going to run up the East Coast this weekend. It's really a nor'easter in its shape and form. It has got a cold core to it. It's going to have frontal boundaries, so it's not a tropical event. But our tropical events, of course, they're all named. We've got Jerry, which we're going to watch here, go to the north. We also have Karen. That was named just yesterday. She's going to be a problem, I think, more for Europe than for the United States. We have Raymond and we have Patricia, which are going to be influencing the precipitation patterns across the southwestern United States. But outside of that, there's another front coming right in through here that's bringing in some precipitation coming out of parts of Iowa, Illinois, Missouri early this morning. And the bigger news, like the biggest change that's taking place, is actually half a world away. And Matt did a great job of kind of explaining that yesterday. I'm going to kind of dig into what he talked about. But let's get into this first. This morning, just about 20 minutes before 6 a.m., we do have widespread frost advisories and freeze warnings throughout the Northeast. We also have them here in parts of North Dakota. There's winter storm watches that have been placed in parts of Idaho and Montana, and a large area of flood watch that stretches from pockets of Southern California through a lot of Arizona, Utah, and the kind of corner here of Colorado and New Mexico. Now, back to the East Coast, there will continue to be a lot of coloring on this map along the coast as different issues, including high wind issues, coastal gale, strong rip current, all of these things will start to show up here simply because of the size of the system that's going to roll up the East Coast later on this weekend. But we're likely going to be moving ourselves into a time period, especially as we get closer and closer to November, where this map just looks a whole lot more colorful as we start to see the pattern change. I did want to show you the temperatures early this morning. We did have, like I said, the frost advisories in place, but I was checking the surface obs and a little bit before sunrise this morning, we were down in the upper 30s and low 40s throughout much of the eastern Corn Belt, but I hadn't seen widespread frost in that area. Now, this is about climatologically normal for a first frost in this region around October. I think 17th to the 20th is pretty common, so we wouldn't think too much about it being about a week early in this region, but quite chilly in parts of the Northeast. On the radar this morning, you can see the outside kind of rain bands here. I mean, this is really just moisture associated with two features. There's a low off the northwest coast, off the coast of California, and then the moisture on the northern edge of Patricia working its way into pockets of Southern California over toward Arizona, Utah, and also into parts of Nevada, maybe getting pretty close to Las Vegas here. This is going to be a major focal point, though, what's going on right in this area. And as this begins to take shape later today, we're going to watch low pressure form and start to move its way up the coast. I'll get you more on that in just a moment here. But first, I'm curious, we do have a system coming right out of Iowa into Missouri and Illinois. And I was just looking this morning. My grandma lives over in west central Illinois, and she's about to, well, I'd say get woken up, but she's probably been up 2 hours before I even woke up. And there's going to be some lightning and thunder coming through here. And she was just commenting, I was talking to her yesterday about just how dusty it's been. Of course, her part of Illinois has been extremely dry since August 1st. And the farmer across the street was harvesting yesterday, and she said it was just a massive amount of dust coming off the combine harvester. And that's been what's caused this fire risk in this area for quite some time. So this will be some welcome rain for her, but this is going to start to slow down today's harvest efforts in this area. But I don't imagine too many growers would be too upset about just getting some moisture back into the system. So that's the lightning strikes early this morning. Okay, bigger picture. This is going to be an important ridge of high pressure, okay? Because we've seen that ridge of high pressure establish itself for quite some time. And that ridge is doing two things. It's allowing 1, 2, 3, 4 features, actually 5 features to kind of orbit around it. You see it? These are all troughs of low pressure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is what's going to send Raymond and Patricia's moisture into the into the southwest. This is what's going to keep this cutoff low, streaming moisture and snow into the Cascades and Sierra Nevada and also into the Rockies. It's going to help send this trough, which has really almost cut itself off from the main flow, over to the east, which will eventually influence what's going on with this system forming in the southeast. These two become our nor'easters. So when I tell you that this is the most important feature, it is. But I said there's two things. The other piece of this is to keep this region in through here, in most of Texas, very, very dry in this particular pattern. But we're looking for anything that can upset these, features like this. And I think the story comes back to what Matt mentioned and really did an excellent job of explaining yesterday. Matt was also on Fox Weather last night explaining this. It was fantastic. But there is a feature happening a half a world away that could translate into weather pattern changes across North America, I think within the next 15 to 20 days, maybe even sooner. And it all has to do with the strength and speed of this piece of the jet stream, which is being influenced right now by several factors. And I want to show what they are really quickly here. So just as a point of learning about the atmosphere, and I've mentioned this before, there is a birthplace of weather in the Northern Hemisphere. And there are kind of two spots, I should say, where that happens. One is around, the archipelago, including Indonesia and Southeast Asia. And the reason I say that is if you've never looked at the weather, there are just nearly constant storms in this area. It's a part of our MJO region and circulation. And it is also just a spot where we often get winds that come off of the Indian Ocean anomalously in that direction, off of the Pacific Ocean here in our typical trade wind. And we just get a lot of rising motion. So that heat has to get exhausted. So some of it goes in the northern hemisphere. Some of it goes in the southern hemisphere. And you're saying, well, why here? Well, as you go across, the Pacific, there's generally cooler water and subsidence over here. So we're not getting that rising motion like you can get on the hot water side. That's all promoted by the trade winds that roll through here. Now, the trade winds are a near surface feature. So let me go show you where they are. There we go. Those are the trade winds. So generally speaking, the reason why we don't talk about South America as being the starting point for this is because we have subsidence in a desert here and a massive rainforest on this side, and the Atlantic is tiny comparatively. So there's a disruption of land in South America and in Africa here, which is why this span of water from India into the Pacific is so critical. Can you see it now? Look, see it coming from that direction, see it coming from this direction, and it just meets here. Now, as the air gets exhausted to the north, what ends up happening is you find this poleward temperature gradient. So the atmosphere is very thick and tall over the equator and very compacted and short over the poles. And that temperature transition translates into a pressure gradient. And it is what sparks the westerlies. But they are enhanced by the massive continent and the fact that there's a huge bit of mountains right in through here, right? The Himalayas. They stir it up, and as Matt mentioned the other day, they can actually act as a barrier against which the atmosphere often pushes. And because the atmosphere is in this constant mode of attempting to conserve its momentum, all right, you end up getting these accelerations in the flow of the atmosphere. In fact, if I could tell you something really amazing about the way the atmosphere works, it's the atmosphere's attempt to get into equilibrium, where all of the forces balance out, like the pressure gradient force, the Coriolis force. It's where friction and acceleration, which is the imbalance of those forces, gives rise to these things, areas of high and low pressure. And the place where that happens, just most common to spark these big weather events, is somewhere between Indonesia and this part of Asia. And then it comes across the open Pacific and it hits these mountains right here. And they do another stir. They just force the atmosphere to break up its flow and add a frictional component deep into the air. And it gives brand new systems a chance to form on the lee side of the Rockies, where they can pull Gulf moisture, because there is no physical barrier in the atmosphere in this region. It's just big flat river plain. Then it hops over the Appalachians, which are short, and it goes across the open Atlantic, where these systems occlude and decay, and then they just die way over here in Europe. And Europe tends to get our old weather. Okay, that was not what I intended to talk about this morning, but I want to come back to this because this region especially, over the last 20, 30 days, has gotten colder, while it's been warmer, more mild to the south. Now, what's the implications of this? Well, that cold is there because there's some snow. Now, I'll just show you something. If I kind of go back and forth, this is on October the 6th. Where are you? There's Mongolia. This is, Siberia. If I just show you the morning pass from Modus versus the afternoon, you can see, if I go back and forth here, whoops, how do I do this? There we go. You can see the snow under the clouds. You see it right there? That snow is what's helped drop the temperatures in this area, and the thermal contrast is very strong. So it's colder than normal to the north, warmer than normal to the south, and in the middle, the gradient is huge because of the Coriolis effect. It turns to the right, and there you go. Accelerating winds. Now, that is our whole story, to be honest. You want me to tell you what I think is going to happen in November? Right now, the story is taking shape right here. We're just going to keep an eye on the fact that there is additional snowpack compared to normal in this area, while not in this region. So if we were to kind of look at the departure, see how much more snow is in this area compared to historical averages. So if you're saying, Eric, just get to the point, what the heck does this mean? It means, I'm sorry the map projection changes, it means that this right here is going to be the spark in the flow of the atmosphere to knock this out. It's going to take some time. What is it? Cutoff lows here, ridges over the south, the jet stream way to the north, and that whole pattern will slowly break down. Now, it's not going to be immediate. It takes a while for this jet to influence all the way across the Pacific Ocean, break through the Gulf of Alaska. But what I notice is we get out there, this is October 19th, 20th, 21st. Look at that guy. See this? Dipping. Trough comes on. We get southwest flow. The ridge, which had been over Texas, is now east. And that starts to begin the pattern of giving us right flow out of the southwest that can start to deliver multiple systems and break down the drought. Now, we're not swinging for the fences here, but we're out there pretty far. And we're trying to make some assessment about how this is all going to play out. But I'm going to show you the effect of it in the models. I showed you the GFS a moment ago. It's in the European too, which is what you're looking at now. So over the next week, all right, we have this system coming up the East Coast. We have the moisture from Raymond and Patricia here. We have the cutoff flow that's sitting there. That's why this whole area looks wet, and we will possibly get some snow out of this too. We'll take a look at that in a second. But that ridge is protective here, and it's relatively dry. Now watch, let's take it out 10 days. Has it broken down? No. But once we get out there fully into week 2, see this? That is the first signal that the jet extension is possibly going to drive in something that does like this. Can you see it? There's the main flow. The ridge moves into the west. Things probably dive like this and gives us a good chance at a moisture pull out of the Gulf, and we could start to break down what has been a drier pattern. So all of the models are showing this. It's October 18th to the 18th to the 24th, and this is moving toward the east after that. That's the thought process. Now, the nerdy way by which we look at it is right here. This is a mountain torque figure, and I'm not looking at the end here, at this point in October. It's the change that's going to take place right in this area that is going to spark the movement of the jet stream. This is what Matt was talking about in depth yesterday. So, have we seen it before? Absolutely, we've seen this before. This is now a time series and a map. It's more of a Hofmuller type diagram here, but it goes back and looks at the vertical and zonal. So this is going up in the atmosphere and looking at the west-east component of the total atmospheric angular momentum. So this is the momentum of the atmosphere, its gains and its losses. Now, we have lost momentum since August, and this is what has caused large sections of the United States to go into drought. I'm going to show you this again in a few minutes, but I'm talking about that. Okay, I mean, huge areas to go into drought. But what we're getting into here is that if this starts to make the turn and come back up, then that gain in momentum tends to give us more circumglobal troughs. And we saw it, this goes back a full year, we saw it at the end of October last year, return back toward normal in November. Now watch this. Big spike here in late November, early December, that hit the West Coast with the big storm system, and again there in December. These were two big time periods that the West Coast took strong flow. We then lost a bunch of momentum going into January. Do you remember what happened into January when that occurred? We had the Palisade fires. We had the flow stuck in the midsection of the United States. Brutally cold air, snow went all the way down to New Orleans. Then in February and March, the momentum built back up. All right. Then we kind of lost it again into April. And this was the discussion about how we were worried about spring drought issues. But as we got further into April and started May, the momentum came back up. And this is what prompted all of the wet conditions across the Mid-South. Remember that this year? This was the wetter conditions in the southern plains of the United States. And then as we got into July, all right, momentum fell. And we meteorologists were like, okay, if it stays in the basement, if it just keeps dropping, we're going to be majorly concerned about central United States ridging and mega drought. And then as soon as July 1st happened, the momentum came back up. And what did it do in July? It stormed like mad throughout the midsection of the United States. It was August when the pattern lost its momentum, and it's still losing momentum, and we're curious if it's going to come back up. That is kind of the tale, the story. And I'm going to be honest with you, if you're watching this and you're studying meteorology and you're like, well, hey, I'm interested in these global patterns. I want to figure out better prediction. You should put all of your effort, if you want to do subseasonal weather, put all of your effort into studying global momentum and the MJO. That would be what I would tell you to start. Start with those two things. After you've learned your basics, dig hard into global momentum changes and then the MJO, because those two things operate on the subseasonal time scale. And I think they have the greatest influence overall in our pattern. Okay, sorry, I keep getting off here a little bit, but let's get back to the idea. So I mentioned last October versus last November. Look, in October, we had weaker flow here that dipped in the Gulf of Alaska and ridged out in the midsection of the country. Now, where have we seen that? That's exactly what's going on right now. Okay? What that resulted in October last year was this. Now remember, this was post-Helene. Helene was at the end of September. So you have Milton here, but Helene's moisture was gone, and we went back over very dry throughout most of the country. All right, what happened? Well, this was October. This is how the pattern changed in November. October, November. Momentum builds out of Asia. It then replaces this with a ridge that dives in here, southwest flow, and it just gets much faster. That's the return of flow. So you went from this in October to that in November. And I told you earlier this week, right? I think 2024 in the fall is an analog to 2025. They both had weak La Niñas. They had very similar ocean temperature patterns. And we're just going to sit here and wonder if we're going to get what we need to get out of that high pressure pushing against these mountains to invigorate the jet. That's it. That's the birth of this pattern and its potential change. There's another thing too, and I was just watching this. Keep an eye right here. This is Halong. And that particular system, watch right here, seems to, by the time we get into the weekend and early next week, get recurved to the north. And if that goes up there as well, that is another source to invigorate the North Pacific jet. Now, this is the storm system we're talking about. There's Raymond, Priscilla, Jerry, and Karen. But that's the one over here that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, because some of the forecast tracks, if you just have a look at it here, are taking it and shoving it over toward the Aleutian Islands. And what would be very interesting is if this, 7, 8, 9, 10 days from now, was the beginning of developing lower pressure here and more ridging there. Because if that's the case, and we build in high pressure here where we've had low for such a long time, the jet then dives into the United States. That's the entire thought process all kind of wrapped up. So let's see if it happens. If we play this forward, there's our cutoff lows on the west. We'll take a look at the snow, everything from this in just a few minutes. We also know that getting into this weekend, there's our trough of low pressure that's sitting over the southeast, which helps promote this nor'easter that goes up. And then a lot of warmth will try to resurge back in the central United States as we get out into next week. But all of our focus, if we're just trying to figure out what's happening, is by the 18th, I'm keeping an eye on two things. The position and symmetry of that trough, stacked north-south, opening up flow into the midsection of the country. I know it's, it's the 18th, so we're 8 days out in the forecast. But I'm also watching if this edges its way in here. Ready? So here we go. This is the 18th, 19th, 20th. That should invigorate week 2 in the Midwestern United States. And then there it is. And that's going to be the shift we're going to keep an eye on right here. It's been shown up in the models multiple times. Now, back to the near term. We do have Raymond, and we have Priscilla. There it is. Let's watch it again. Priscilla and Raymond, their low pressure working its way into this side of Mexico. And as a result, over the next 7 days, we are anticipating a very, very wet corridor here, which includes large sections of Mexico, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. The rainfall that you see here is primarily being promoted by the cutoff low that's living in here, and we're expecting this to be a lot of snow. Same thing for here. But the snowfall totals have backed off a little bit in parts of the Sierra Nevada. Now, you know where that ridge is, so this region is overall drier, but we are keeping an eye on a system going up the coast, and I'll show you more about this in just a few seconds here. I did want to point out that right now on the CPC excessive rainfall outlooks, we do have several areas that are under moderate risk today, and then we see tomorrow, and then again on Sunday, areas that just continue to be on the lookout for excessive rain. You can also see it along the coast as well, as the nor'easter starts to take shape. Severe weather-wise, no major organized severe weather, but we could see some stronger storms with this system coming into the southwest as well. So let's go ahead and have a look at it with the NAM model. And if we play this out, this is starting off this morning, working our way through this afternoon and this evening. And here they are. You're watching that low form, the remnant moisture of Patricia first, and then there comes Raymond's moisture working its way in. Now, you saw the winter storm watches. That's because as we work our way through the weekend, we are expecting to get snow in the Rocky Mountains here. And the potential for some pretty heavy rain moving through the eastern side, cold rain moving through the eastern side of Montana with snow on the backside. So we'll watch that carefully. By Sunday, a lot of the attention is going to be moving here to see how strong the winds will be and how far to the north this system has made it running up the east coast. And we're going to continue to kind of monitor that carefully. But I wanted to compare models for you here. The NAM only goes at 60 hours. So we're going to flip over to the GFS versus the European comparison to see where this, especially where this nor'easter makes it. So here we are. This is now Saturday evening getting into Sunday morning. And what will be interesting to keep an eye on is the inward extent of the rainfall. I was talking to my good friend Dr. Cole yesterday, and he's like, hey, the models are really backing off of my rainfall. I said, well, one of them is. It's the European, because it's attempting to take this trough that's sneaking over the Great Lakes today and helping to initiate or pull the system out to open ocean. It's also being promoted by a much stronger high that's sitting over parts of the Canadian Maritime. But if you have a look here, the GFS is a bit more generous with the rainfall coming further inland. Now, that's not the only game in town. I mean, both models are attempting to see the system that's coming through parts of Montana. They're taking that system with enough cold air on the backside to drop some snow in through here. And that's why I mentioned earlier, you could get some snow that sneaks in. We may even clip parts of North Dakota with a little bit of snow, but it seems to be more in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Now, this is going to be a very, very difficult forecast, and the models often over-predict early snowfall when you're out in the plains and prairie here. So don't take this verbatim, but we'll keep a close eye on it. The front from that tries to move through the Midwest by the time we get out to Monday, and at that point, we're still watching some stronger winds and some coastal rain here from the nor'easter event. And as we play it forward, there's our cutoff low coming into California. This is next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and what we're going to be watching for at this point is the pattern beginning to make its transition. So I did want to show you some winds. Let's just have a quick look at this. The Midwest, we are expecting strong winds through the weekend, 40 to maybe 50 mile an hour gusts. Along the coast, the 30 to 40 mile an hour gusts are highly probable, but we could see some gusts 50 to 60 miles an hour. So this is going to be an issue with coastal regions here, beach erosion, huge waves. It's actually lined up with a high tide given the full moon that we just saw. We got to be just aware of the strength of that system through early this next week going up the East Coast. All right. I'll go ahead and show you the GFS forecast on total snow. It was the most aggressive with the system coming out of Montana. That's by Tuesday. It's trying to just lay down a lot of snow. But overall, we're just going to keep an eye on the total precipitation out of this. And over the next week, everywhere that you see the color shading here represents the probability of getting at least an inch. And as we take this out to 10 days, do you see how this begins to fill in? That's with these more progressive troughs. Now, it's pretty clear. In fact, I think I'll lose the model run here. Yeah. Let's go back to the 0Z. Sorry, I have to do that every day. There we go. This is our driest corridor for the next 10 plus days. And that's where we're waiting on the ridge to break down and to get a real front in here to knock things out. I do think that the later you go into October and the more into November, we start to have, more of a positive influence on moisture into this area. But right now, just take a look. The week 2 forecast, they're all beginning to line up with something coming through here. It's just to the south of it. Maybe the AI's got something in there, but to the south of it where the drier conditions are continue to hang on. And that's where we've seen the drought expansion. Take a look at the newest map. I'm just curious. I didn't look at this before I showed it. I'm curious what the new time series data shows. Let's zoom in here. We've now got 73% of the lower 48 in some form of drought. Back on like August, let's see here, August 1st, or were we? We were at 44%. So, we're looking at nearly a 30% increase in total drought area in the United States. And the change maps are going to tell you a lot. Let's go have just a quick look at those change maps. This is the 1 week change map. If we go back to the 1 month, now you can really begin to see where the degradation was. And if we go back 10 weeks, which should take us back to the end of July, you can now pretty clearly see where that drought has built in. Now, there's not going to be any surprises when I show you the new outlook from mid-October to mid-November. Most of that time period, at least the first 10 to 20 days, we are waiting for this area to fill in. But we've seen a return toward normal here and wetter than normal conditions for the Northwest. That's all prompted by the deep trough that's now expected to be in that area. Okay, that's a pretty clear signal I think we're getting from some of the models. All I'm telling you is that yes, this goes into mid-November. I think that this area sees a shift before we get to mid-November and we start to bring in moisture back into the south and southeast. All right, I didn't talk about temperatures yet, but here's our frost risk map for the next 7 days. I don't think we have any surprises here. Let's take a look at what the high temperatures are doing. You're going to expect to see a lot of cool weather on the West Coast, but watch Montana. 80 on Saturday, Sunday 55. I mean, just a huge swing in temperatures here. And you've got to get cold by Monday. So a good 40-degree swing in temperatures are going to be taking place just with the highs alone. And that's what's going to increase that chance of getting some snow in here. But you can now find the front by Monday into Tuesday as it sweeps across the midsection of the country. The west stays cool under cloud cover and a lot of just rising motion with that cutoff low that's there. But the midsection, this is still where we're hotter and drier. And that gets you out to next Wednesday and Thursday. The models, though, are, like, I love the matrix view of this here. They're in good agreement out the next 10 days. See this? There's the Euro, there's the GFS, and down at the bottom is the AI. But take a look. The Euro is trying to move more of this cooler weather in. So is the GFS, and even the AI is as well. And that is the beginning of that jet extension influence. Now, I know that we are excited about talking about that jet extension. It's just because it's something new and different. We've been stuck for a while. Please do not interpret my enthusiasm as a worrisome point, both for fall severe weather or the shutting down of harvest or just the risk of something. We don't know those details yet. So just wanted to be clear on that. So here's where we're going to finish today. We've been asked, well, does this mean that November and December are going to be cool? But we're not sure yet. There are some analogs that would suggest yes, but the historical trend for the continental United States in November, December since the 70s has been warmer. Yeah, variability is high, but the trend line is robust and statistically significant. So you're probably going to see all the models say it's going to be warm, but we need to be paying close attention across the continental United States to the position of the Pacific jet, and then eventually in December, the North Atlantic. We'll get into that much more soon. I was looking at South America to finish this up. There's one of our NOAA satellites just was catching some of the afternoon convection here, but I was curious. Seems to be a lot of wildfires right now in Bolivia. You can see a lot of wildfire smoke yesterday here. Just something to think about. A lot of forested area in this region. But there have been storms. If you take a look at the latest satellite inferred rainfall using infrared, we can see some convective plumes showing up, meaning there is some rain getting into this region. Now, we'll get a new update on planting progress this afternoon. I anticipate that it's going to still be on the fastest pace compared to historical averages over the last 5 years. But it's the question of which model's right for the forecast going forward. I am leaning toward the European only because it has been performing well so far. So there's the next 7 days from the European and the next 10. Look at the rain that's expected to come in through here. The day 8 through 14 is wetter. And therefore, you look at the next 2 weeks, and what we see is there's drier conditions down into parts of like Santa Fe, over toward, Cordoba. Most of Uruguay is drier, but there's a broad section that's actively planting right now that's going to be getting decent, in fact, above average precipitation for germination. The GFS is like, no, not in Mato Grosso. Here, yes, but not there. Look at the difference. 14-day forecast from the Euro, 14-day forecast from the GFS. And I'm siding with this because of recent performance. All right, that's it. I hope you found this one kind of fun and informative, but we'll just talk again on Monday. Be safe this weekend, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.